And I have to jump on, well, Micah Parsons, who's having a phenomenal year. I mean, he might be the defensive player of the year. Forget about rookie defensive
Right.
player of the year. And obviously, they could have had him.
McDonald. What do you do on your bye weekend, McMullen?
Too much Christmas stuff. Trying to get the house ready for Christmas, so that became more stressful than working.
Hanging
As
of
usually happens.
decorations? Is that what you did? Put the decorations all over the house?
Well, we're a big inside, we're like a Christmas museum inside, so that's hard enough alone. I don't go overboard outside. I don't go, you know, Chevy Chase vacation level.
Right.
Just normal stuff. But the inside, believe it or not, is the bigger problem.
Gotcha. I'm similar here in the McDonald house. So we got the tree up, we got some lights on, but we haven't gone full board decoration, which is late. Now we're 12 days out. Usually this
Yeah,
is
I
the
didn't even realize. We're
yeah,
late.
it's sneaking up on us. You got 12 or 13 days left to shopping for Christmas. So get to it. But as I said on my CBS show over the weekend, here's the beauty of it. They bring it to your house now. You can buy everything online, and
I know, but
Amazon
you got
just
to do
dropped.
it. I got to do. As a matter of fact, it's good you said that because I have to do it as soon as this show is over. I have to sit down, and this is depressing, by the way, Jody. I have to sit down at the computer and shop because I don't want to go out and shop,
Right.
and I want it delivered to my home. But if I wait too much longer, it's not going to be here in time. So I got to get on that.
And I told you a story the other day about seeing as I was getting my second cup of coffee, prepping for Birds 365. There's someone on my front porch at 7:20 in the morning, and I said, "What the hell is that?" I'm waiting for a knock or a ringing of the bell, and I hope there's no ringing of the bell because the wife's still asleep. And sure enough, the guy walks off the porch. I go outside. There's an Amazon package waiting there that they're delivering at 7:15 in the
Yeah.
morning. But hey, if it makes my wife's life easier, which makes my life easier, I'm in. Count me in for all of it. But I'm glad you got some work done over the weekend. I'm sure you wrote too because you're writing every single day, and I'm sure you wrote
Yeah,
at
I wrote
least
about
something.
Micah Parsons. That seems to be Eagles fans always have to have something. And I have to jump on, well, Micah Parsons, who's having a phenomenal year. I mean, he might be the defensive player of the year. Forget about rookie defensive
Right.
player of the year. And obviously, they could have had him. But I argue they couldn't have had him, really, because if you think about, obviously, if they stayed at 6, yes, they could have had him. And that's where they originally were in the draft. Then you had the knockdown to 12 and the move up to 10. And Dallas was sitting there at 10 and they traded down. The Giants were 11. So I think it's ironic because of that 10, 11, 12, where we started, I believe, on April 29th of this year, was 10 Dallas, 11 New York Giants, 12 Philadelphia Eagles. So 3 division rivals, what did they do in the maneuverings and the machinations? And it's going to resonate in those particular cities for years. And right now, Dallas is in the lead. So it becomes a sort of very mini controversy because you and I know, Jody, they're not taking our off-ball linebacker no matter what. They haven't taken one since 1979. And then people say, well, he's a great edge rusher, which he is. But they didn't see him as an edge rusher. And guess what? Either did the Dallas Cowboys. They did it out of necessity because Randy Gregory was out at the time. DeMarcus Lawrence was healthy, was injured. And I had to have somebody. And I said, let's try Parsons. He's so athletic and he's unbelievable at it. They were never going to take Micah Parsons. Never in a million.
You are probably right, and I absolutely love the kid as far as his talent goes. I remember we had right at the beginning of Bird 65 when we started the show back in April, was leading into the NFL draft. We had a couple of good draft guys on, including my guy Rick Saratella, and there were some concerns about Micah Parsons.
Oh yeah,
that he was
short arms.
Part of it was, yes, his measurables, but part of it was that he's not the most coachable player in the world. And he was
Had some off the field stuff. Yeah.
he was one of those guys who opted out And some people saw that as an issue, not only getting up to speed year one, but some people actually held it against the players who decided to do that. I couldn't subscribe to that theory, and I didn't quite get it. Somebody's just protecting their status as an NFL draft player. If you sat out and you were a guy who was projected going into your last year of college as a 5th-round pick, a 6th-round pick, a 7th-round, really? You're going to go without and you're going to roll the dice? When you were a lock 1st-round pick like Jamar Chase or Micah Parsons, you want to take the year off? You want to protect yourself? You're investing in yourself? I had no issue with that. Some people I know, talent evaluators, media guys, did. That they question that. Yeah, I think he's put all those concerns in the rearview mirror because he is, to quote my friend John McMullen, a game wrecker. There are a handful of them in the National Football League, 20, 25. That's about it. And he's one of it 13 games into his NFL career. He's already become a game wrecker. So give the young man credit for what he's accomplishing. Along those lines, let's say we get to week 18 and the Eagles have to win to make the playoffs. And the Cowboys are still within the possibility of getting the number 1 overall seed in the East in the NFL. Probably not. I don't think they're going to be able to catch both the Cardinals and the Bucks and the Packers. One of those teams is going to win the next 3 games, which means, but the Cowboys are only one behind a couple of them. Let's say, for argument's sake, they're still in the mix. They need help, but they can win the number 1 seed. So they come to Philadelphia and they're playing to win the game. Micah Parsons has 3 sacks, a turnover, either a forced fumble or a picked off pass or whatever else. What will it take for the Philadelphia Eagles to rethink their position? That linebacker, we're not going to put any effort into getting a tough light one. A game wrecker like Jody McDonald and John McMullen say. Is there anything that could move the Eagles off the stance they've had for decades?
I think the player has to make you look at certain things, like, and I'm writing about this for Philly Voice this morning, so it'll come out. You'll be able to read it. I'm going to toot my own horn, which I know people love when I do that. When I was looking at Micah Parsons in the draft process, I said, this kid looks to me like an edge rusher. He doesn't look like an off-ball linebacker. He looks like an edge rusher to me. Now, it turns out he's both. But I got killed for that, Jody. I got murdered for that. And everybody pointed to his arm length, which is 31.5. I'm looking up. I use Josh Sweat as an example because I always joke, only because we're in Philadelphia, obviously there's better examples as far as production as a pass rusher. But I always joke, when you talk to NFL people and you said, go get me an edge rusher in the lab. Go make one in a lab. And you talk about, he's got to be 6'5", and he's got to have these long arms, and he's got to be 260, somewhere in that range. He's got to have all this athleticism. So that's why I look at Josh Sweat. So I just looked him up. 34 5/8 is his arm length. That's what you look for when you're talking about an edge rusher. Now, see, here's the problem.
Hold on. Let me interrupt. I'll let you get back to your boy. What's the difference between Josh Sweat and Michael Parsons?
Josh Sweat, 34 5/8 inches arm length. Micah Parsons, 31.5. And that's why people...
We're talking 3 1/8 inch difference.
Yeah, and that's a big
difference.
The difference.
That's
the
difference between taking a player and not taking a player.
That is a huge difference when you're talking about historic production of edge rushers. And that's what they do, right? They look at the years of the draft and they look at the measurables of the successful players. Guys with 31.5-inch arms aren't supposed to be good edge rushers. They're not supposed to be. It's just like good quarterbacks aren't supposed to be under 6 feet tall. But every once in a while, good wide receivers aren't supposed to be 166 pounds. But every once in a while, somebody comes along and breaks the mold, and you got to look at the film and say, you know what? I don't give a you-know-what. This kid can play. I think that part of it, the Eagles maybe because they do it at quarterback. They love Russell Wilson. We talked about that for years. A little bit overblown, they like to say, because they could have drafted him in the second round. You didn't have to wait for the third round. Could have drafted him in the first round. But here's what I say about Micah Parsons. If they considered him an edge rusher, they would have taken him at 6. Never mind 10 or 12. They never had an opportunity at 10, though, because, look, both the Cowboys and the Eagles, their first choice was cornerback. And when I say first choice, understand I got to be very detailed about these types of things. Everybody understands nobody had a chance at Trevor Lawrence, who was number 1 on everybody's board, despite what's going on in Jacksonville. What a mess there. The Eagles also really liked Zach Wilson, but knew there was a firewall so that they could never get from 6 to get him. So from that process, it was, okay, we like 4 players. They like Patrick Surtain, J.C. Horn, the 2 corners, and they like the 2 receivers, Jalen Waddle and DeVonta Smith. And they said, we'll take an extra first-round pick to drop back to 12 because we think we'll get one of those 4 players. And we'd be happy with any of those 4 players. Ultimately, they would have probably liked to have one of the corners first. I think Surtain over Horn, but who knows? Carolina and Denver screwed that up for everybody. Dallas also wanted one of those corners first. Yep. And they sat there at number 10, and their consolation prize was Micah Parsons. And they sat and looked at the board, and you got to give the Cowboys credit. They said, well, the Giants want a receiver. They're not taking Micah Parsons. The Eagles are coming up, and we've been assured they're taking an offensive player. They're not taking Micah Parsons. So we can drop down 2 spots, get an extra third-round pick, save a little money, which never matters to Jerry Jones as he brings his own benches to the FedEx Field. So that part of it doesn't matter. And say we can still get the player we want at 12, and they make the deal. Now, the one thing that could have put the fly in the ointment is the Giants were so despondent about not getting DeVonta Smith, they traded out. So if that team coming up wanted Micah Parsons, the Cowboys would have had egg on their face a little bit. But that was a calculated gamble, worked out for them, and now they have the defensive rookie of the year, maybe the defensive player of the year. But, the thought process of the Eagles should have done this, the Eagles should have done that. They weren't looking at that particular player. So at the end of the day, and they're not the only ones who looked at Micah Parsons and said, this kid can't rush the passer, can't be an edge rusher. He's got to be a linebacker. And they don't value that position at that point of the draft. Bottom line.
Understood. Well, my point is I have no problem with the way that Howie Roseman played the draft day game on this past draft day. You're right. The Cowboys played it to perfection. They could have got stiffed if the Giants had traded out for something, a team jumping up to make a play for a guy like Parsons. But at the board at that time, there were still 2 highly thought of quarterbacks, Justin Fields and
you get more for quarterback trades. So, the team to go up to get Fields, which ended up being Chicago, is going to offer more than a team coming up to get a linebacker. So the Cowboys also knew that, and that's why it was such a smart decision, which people hate to say with Jerry Jones. But it was a good decision, and it was more Stephen Jones anyway.
No issues with the way the Eagles did it, or the Cowboys, or shoot, even the Giants did it, because, right now they look like they got the very short end of the bargain with Kadarius Toney, but they do have a future first-round draft pick, which belongs to the Bears, who, oh, by the way, got beat again last night, so that's a better draft pick right now than any of the 3 the Philadelphia Eagles have, because remember, the Eagles have their own. They have Miami's, they have the Colts. Right, that giant pick that they obtained will be in front of the Eagles. 3 picks this year, so even though it looks like the Giants got the short end of the stick now, by the time next year's draft, this upcoming year's, well, next year, because we're still in 2021, the 2022 draft rolls around, the Giants could actually reap the benefits. Here's the only thing I'm asking, John, and I think you did a good job of avoiding my question. If you answered it already, I've already forgotten what you said. Shame on me.
It's not the first
What
time.
will it take for the Eagles to acknowledge that, if you get a game-wrecking linebacker, it can be very helpful to your football team, even though they haven't thought along those lines in 40 years?
Well, they have done it at other positions. And as I pointed out, to be fair, wide receiver is one of those positions. Typically, they're not taking a wide receiver at number 10 in the draft. I mean, they haven't done that in years and years and years and years. So they have proven that they are willing to look at a player over positional value, measurables, things like that. With DeVonta Smith, happens to be in the same year. Same thing. They didn't get him, but they would have drafted. They were going to draft. They wanted to draft Christian McCaffrey. Now, could you imagine the Eagles taking a running back in the top 10? That's how much they like that particular player. Obviously, they weren't able. He didn't fall to them. They weren't able. They were 14 that year, and he went, I think, 8. So it wasn't that close. And they weren't able to do it. So they have shown a willingness to look at certain players at these less valued positions and say, okay, this kid's so good. Now, DeVonta Smith, that is also partially fueled by past failures. People have brought this up, and it's fair. If J.J. Arcega-Whiteside turned into a good player, if Jalen Reagor turned into a first-round pick, they're not taking DeVonta Smith last year. And then you throw a curveball. But I say they're still not taking Micah Parsons. They would have, again, traded up to get one of the corners if they felt that was the way to go, or they would have traded down probably to take a Kwity Paye, turned out to be a pretty good player, or an offensive lineman. Your guy, Elijah Barrett-Tucker, is going to be a pretty good player. They weren't going to take the kid. And maybe maybe they look at him and they say, we got to open our mind. Russell Wilson, DeVonta Smith, Christian McCaffrey. There are certain talents that should override the other stuff. FU players, as I like to call them.
We don't want to say FU to our first guest and push them back, but I do want to get your take on the Washington football team Dallas game from yesterday. And our first guest is going to be Jimmy Kempski for Philly Voice. Eagle Beat guy is going to join us in 5 minutes or so. What is your biggest take? And I'm sure you watched it. The Washington football team against the Cowboys yesterday. A lot of talk at a time, including here on Birds 365. You actually have to root for the Cowboys. I was okay with just sitting back and watching the game and see where the chips fall, where they may. If the Cowboys lose, you still have dreams about winning the division. If the Cowboys win, all right, the Washington football team's coming back to us. I didn't think there was rooting necessary. You just watch and then you react thereafter. What is John McMullen's biggest reaction after the Cowboys beat the Washington football team?
I can't believe they let him back in the game. They destroyed him. That was the theme of this whole, starting on Thursday night. You see all these teams, Minnesota's destroying Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh comes back. Dallas is destroying Washington. Tampa Bay's destroying Buffalo. There was another game. San Francisco was up 2 scores on Cincinnati. They all let these teams back in the football game. And ultimately, it's like winning an NBA game by 30 points. You give up the big run, but they spent too much energy and you end up winning the game. That's kind of what happened. The Cowboys dominated, and they did so many. But they put the Washington football team on a tee for the Eagles. They hurt the quarterback. They hurt the best receiver. We got to see if Terry McLaurin can make it through concussion protocol. Taylor Heineke's having an MRI. Man, they put the Washington football team on a tee. And by the way, the Cowboys have 3 game records on defense now. And 4, if you want to add Trayvon Diggs. Randy Gregory, for people who haven't noticed, finally, after 100 years and 150 suspensions, is a monster. And DeMarcus Lawrence is back. This is Birds 365. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for this. When the Cowboys are healthy, they might be the best team in the NFC. You were talking about
I don't. How'd the Cowboy offense play yesterday?
Well, Dak, that was an awful interception. He let him in the
So you're
game.
the best team in the conference. You got to be able to play.
Well, they didn't have Pollard again. You got to be healthy. You can't be giving the ball to Corey Clement 100 times because Ezekiel Elliott's banged up and playing, and Tony Pollard's not playing. I put healthy in there. I said when healthy, and they haven't been healthy. They're a good football team.
Good football team, not the best team in the NFC. Tampa's better, Green Bay's better, and we'll see Arizona tonight. I think
Tampa gave up the big lead too, Jody.
Yeah, Tampa gave up the big lead to Buffalo. The Cowboys gave up the big lead to the Washington football team. A little bit of a difference here as far as I'm concerned. Cowboys looked great yesterday defensively. They looked pretty poor offensively. Kind of a flip the script type thing. The Cowboys defense was the thing that looked at the thing that could have kept them from advancing deep in the playoffs, and the offense had all the weapons that you could ask for. Right now, it's the exact opposite. The defense is playing much better, and the offense has got some serious questions attached to it. But that's not till week 18 when the Cowboys come to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. You're right about the Washington football team, though. And this, I've been giving Taylor Heineke credit these last couple of weeks because he's played really well. He's above a game manager. He's not a franchise quarterback, but he's above a game manager. You know what I saw yesterday? A guy who can't come from behind. And I know the Washington football team got it to a one-score game, but it was as much as the defense and Dak Prescott throwing bad interceptions that got them back in again. It wasn't really the strength of Taylor Heineke, and then he got hurt and he was out of the game. Anyway, he's not a guy. If you get ahead on the Washington football team, Taylor Heineke's not going to come from behind and beat you. So that's one of the things we'll be talking about all week long as we lead up to Eagles and Washington. First game back from the bye. We'll talk that much more about the bye week. And we'll do so with our buddy, Jimmy Kempski, scheduled to join us from Philly Voice. Hopefully he's next here on Birds 365.